Okay. Okay, well, we have one person. No. My YouTube link has me very fetchingly, like, leaning over, like I'm looking at something very intently, which I am, because I'm trying to work out which chapter exactly I want to do for the reading. So I can see one person here. I will wait a little and see if anybody else shows up. There we go. Oh, Liz. Gasp, swearing in books. Oh my goodness. Bože moi, as Alexei would say. Okay, so while I'm waiting. First things first. Yeah, I can't even spell. Okay, so first things first is a giveaway. Oops, that's not it. Okay, so I have a giveaway going on for Blood Hound, which is the first book in the series that I've written. I'm just going to post that link on the feed before I get stuck into the introductions for the video, just so that people have it. That'll be what people want. Blood Hound is a full-length novel. I don't really believe in writing really short things when it comes to publishing ebooks. There's a trend in UF at the moment to write a lot of short stories, but I haven't been doing that. In fact, Stained Glass is 527 pages. So I will put this up. Actually, it's until the 9th. Okay, so there's 3 people, which is enough to start. So I think on this particular platform, there should be a comments area. There's like a group chat area. You can leave comments in there if you want, or you can ask questions or leave comments on Ronnie's party. So firstly, I just really want to thank Ronnie for hosting this event. I think it's been fabulous. It's his first event, and I think he's done an amazing job. He has quite high attendance for one of these. I've been to a few of these author parties now, and it's quite rare to see like such a huge turnout for one of them. So yeah, to sort of get started, as I mentioned in my introductory post, I'm author and artist. I write urban fantasy, very much on the horror end of urban fantasy. So I don't really do a whole lot of the paranormal romance side of things. I grew up reading Alan Moore, and I also grew up in a very eclectic household. So on my mother's side, we have fortune tellers and a witch and pirates back in the the history of the family. I'm Australian, so all of my ancestors basically were convicts. And on my father's side, we have organized crime. And the two interests, I guess, have kind of combined into the one series. So I basically started writing about organized crime with magic involved, and essentially a protagonist who is both a magician in the occult sense and a hitman for the Russian Mafia in New York. And I began writing about this because I was really interested in the Ukrainian diaspora and the immigrant history of New York. And I've had a very multicultural upbringing myself. I've had parents. Oh, hang on, Ronnie's just commenting. I had foster parents and carers who come from different backgrounds, India, China. I've lived in about 8 different countries and grew up in immigrant communities. So I have a really strong interest in diaspora, which is basically the word that's used to describe the spread of culture to other countries. And so all of those interests are kind of combined into this series. Someone's complimenting my cover. And yeah, so essentially what I'm going to do today is I'm going to do readings from Stained Glass, which is the new book. I'm also going to do a reading from a short story or it's like an introductory novella, which I'm going to be giving away for free to my mailing list, which is basically like a short prequel to the series, and it introduces Alexei when he was much younger. He was only 25 in the prequel story. And essentially the two stories are quite juxtaposed because Stained Glass, I don't know how many of you have actually read Blood Hound. I know quite a few NaNoWriMo people have read Blood Hound. But Blood Hound, which is this book, oh, it's backwards. Look at that. Blood Hound is basically the establishing book that sets Alexei up as a mage and a hitman in New York. In Blood Hound, he essentially like levels up. He's been a kind of at a static level of magic for a long time. He's kind of been in the doldrums. And in this book, he meets and it basically finds the trigger for an increase in his power. And the books are set in a setting which me and my wife both co-create. The setting is called Dermal Highway. There is a wiki if you want to search the term for Dermal Highway. And I'll post a link to the wiki on Facebook. Dermal Highway is essentially, my wife is autistic, and Dermal Highway is her like inner world. It was something that she has been conceiving of since she was really young. She was, I think, 8 or 9 when she started developing it, and she's 45 now. She just turned 45. So she's been working on that for a long time. But Kanth had a lot of trouble putting words to what she saw in her head. So what I did when I came along was I helped her to kind of articulate these images and these pictures that she's seen and that she's kind of had contained in herself for a really long time. And in doing so, I was able to sort of integrate my own original characters and basically generate original stories within the limitations of this setting that she created. And she gave me control over creating the magic and basically like how magic operates in this system. So I will quickly post a link. So give me a second. I'm talking about the background of the series right now. Dermal, oops. It's hard to spell when you're talking into a microphone. The Dermal Highway paracosm. So a paracosm is very familiar to anyone who's read Terry Pratchett. Discworld is paracosm, basically, and it's a similar sort of thing. And my wife is very pleased that I have been writing stories in Dermal Highway. She has basically said that my books are effectively several 100-page long love letters, which I think is really cute. So the second book deals with the consequences of the first book. In the first book, sorry to spoil, in the first book, Alexei loses the only people he's close to. He's an autistic man himself. He doesn't have many friends. He's a bit of a loner. He loses the few people he does care about. And so book 2, which is considerably less dark on the cover, it's a bit brighter. I got better at cover design in between the 2 books. Stained Glass is very much about his need for revenge and how his pride ends up steering him away from being able to enact a really solid revenge plot. And he basically gets screwed over. This whole book is pretty much Alexei suffering horribly. The first book deals with an original creature in Dermal Highway, which is called a gift horse. Gift horses are kind of analogous to unicorns in a lot of ways, except that they have a human form. And Stained Glass is very heavy on the shapeshifters. It's pretty much all shapeshifters all the time. I think this book is about 80% cats, just generally cats. Alexei loves cats. He has a cat as his familiar. And the rest of the shapeshifters are pretty much all cats. So it's pretty much cats as far as the eye can see. And I will quickly post a picture of him. Yay. So this is Alexei. He's extraordinarily cheerful, as you can see from this image. So I just posted a picture up on the event feed, which is of Alexei and his Neshama. Neshama are a fairly important feature of the series. They're basically, Neshama is a Kabbalic word, so it's Jewish mysticism, because Alexei is Jewish, he's Jewish Ukrainian. It basically is analogous to the soul, the human soul specifically, as opposed to the soul as it emanates from God. And the Neshama in this series is kind of like avatars in Mage. I don't know if any of you are familiar with World of Darkness and the Mage setting. Another kind of analogous thing would be the daemons from The Golden Compass or His Dark Materials by Philip Pullman. So in this picture that I just posted on the feed, that's Alexei with his Neshama, whose name is Kutka. Kutka is a raven like deity from Siberia, the native Siberian peoples. And so he has this kind of raven spirit, I guess, as his guide and mentor. His guide and mentor is quite sassy. So I will post one more image, a photo that will give some context for the reading I'm about to do. And then I will do the reading. I'm going to read chapter 3 of this book. I'm not actually going to read the first chapter because the first chapter has some spoilers, like some pretty significant spoilers if you haven't read the first book. Whereas the third chapter, I think more gives some context as to what the first book was about because it involves an interrogation scene. So I will just... Oh, well. Actually, no. So the villains of this series are called the Morphord. And we have actually like a calligraphy sort of handwritten book that we reference. We have like a grimoire that has all of the monsters and the kinds of villains that appear in the series. And that book is called the Phytonus Contagium. I will also post on the feed. And the Phytonus Contagium, you get a sense of what characterizes evil in this series. The key phrase from the page I just posted, cancer is a cell without a kill switch. There's a very strong viral cancerous like unreality element to the evil in this series. So I'll read this chapter and then I will probably take a break to answer some questions or field any comments that people have left. So, chapter 3. Cold. Everything was cold and stiff and aching. The world returned in pieces, brittle moments of sensation. My hands and throat hurting, my head bumping rhythmically against something hard. My cheek was pressed against crunchy carpet, damp and prickly, vibrating with every dip in the road. Then Nick turned a corner hard, and my head rammed into the side of the trunk. Damp darkness overtook all. The next sensation was shivers, cold metal, and then blinding hot light. The lamp burst through my eyelids like a punch to the face. As the world swayed into focus, recognition filtered in past the pain and incessant itching. I knew this room. The Aramore warehouse interrogation room was a small square, tiled white on the floor and all four walls. There was a drain set in the center. I was stripped to the waist, chained to a bar mounted near the rear corner of the room, and on a hard seat that was bolted to the floor. The man and woman in front of me, they were also familiar, terribly so. Sergei, who was Alexei's boss, reclined on a rickety office chair from the upstairs warehouse, hands folded on his belly. He had one leg crossed over the other, leaning back on his too small seat with the presence and nonchalance of a king. And a king he was. He was pushing 70 and was still usually the largest man in the room, with a thick red beard and oiled red hair pulled back into a short ponytail. The Pakun of the Mafia that bore his surname looked more Viking than Slav, a Viking in a gaudy red velvet suit that clashed violently with his hair. Vera Akhitova stood at parade rest beside him, straight as a rail and just as hard. She was sinewy and strong, with taut freckled arms, a short bob of brown straw hair, and no obvious humanity. She carried 2 revolvers on her belt, one on each side. They were both loaded and primed. "Well," Sergei finally said, "Alexei Grigorievich Sokolsky, we have come full circle." My head was clearing slowly, too slowly. I tried to call anger, energy, a word of power. Nothing formed in my mind, an empty echoing cavern. I felt empty, small, weak, alone. Alone? Where was Kutka? "We are presented with temptations in life, Alexei, tests." Sergei laced his hands on his knee as he leaned forward. "Tests by which we judge the character of a man. Men in this business have to have mettle, The kind that lets them permit someone else to take charge without shame or suspicion. Someone who plays the long game, Alexei, who knows what they are doing." I lunged at him a little, snorting like a bull, and reached back for the core of me for my magic, and failed. It was like trying to catch fish with my hands, and the slippery inability to turn inward sent a spike of panic straight through my chest. Adrenaline woke me up. What have you done?" Sergei blinked once. "You went against your orders earlier this month. The men you nearly killed didn't remember that you broke into the safe house, but that doesn't mean the memories weren't there. I examined them. I know you tried to take Vincent to the Manellis in exchange for Vasily." Mealy mouthed, I stared back at him in sullen, furious silence. Sergei leaned forwards. "And then, what happened, Alexei? What was in that factory worth dying for? Wouldn't you like to know?" Sergei cracked a grin. His teeth were sharp, unnaturally sharp, sharper than any human's teeth had a right to be. "Come now, Alexei. No need to be sarcastic with me. Not when you're here like this." Kutka was not there, but he was still linked to me. He had to be. I was alive, but I couldn't feel or hear him. I lowered my face, nostrils flaring. "There wasn't anything in that damn warehouse," I growled. "Just a dog." Now, just for the record, a dog in Dermal Highway is like a capitals, DOG. It's kind of an acronym. Essentially, it's God spelled backwards. So you're talking about some pretty heavy-duty demons when you hear the word dog in Dermal Highway. The word stirred him to his feet. Sergei sighed. He put his hands to his thighs and stood, crickly, looming over me. "I wanted to make princes out of you and Vasily. Lev warned me that having you grow up here in America would make you selfish and untrustworthy, disobedient. He was right. You're worse than a stray dog, Alexei. An ungrateful, worthless little bitch. Let's try once more. What was in the warehouse? The dog that ate Lev." I glared from under my brow. So it seems like he wasn't much of anything either. Sergei chuffed, clapping his hands. "Did you hear that, Vera? Listen to this cockerel smart mouth, eh?" Vera hadn't looked away from me, her thumbs hooked on her gun belt. At mention of her name, she straightened from her slouch like a puppet on its strings. I was still staring at her when Sergei swooped into my vision, caught my jaw in his callous paw, and squeezed. "Look at me." His tone was guttural and utterly compelling. My skin crawled, and pain lanced through my skull as my eyes were unwillingly forced to focus in on his own. They were a deep blue-violet, cornflower blue. The whites were yellow. The veins were black. Sergei licked his bottom lip and then bit it, pushing the point of a tooth through... Sorry, I lost my place. Pushing the point of a tooth through the thin skin. It cracked like glaze, and as the seconds passed, blood began to well up from his flesh. It was very, very dark brown, orange-black, not red. It smelled strange, powerful, and despite myself, my mouth began to water even as my nose stung with a sudden acrid odor like ammonia and burnt wax. What you don't understand, Sergei said, reaching up to dab his lip with his finger, is that I won't just kill you, Alexei. I know you're brave, plucky, but weak, so no, I won't kill you. I will erase you. One by one, you and your little incarnations across time and space will start to die, while you suck from my mouth like a cracked baby. You will do anything for my blood, and you won't be able to stop yourself. You'll do it until you, your soul, and your mind are nothing but dry, hollow puppets. Zarya had told me, her face bloody silver, that there were many Alexeis. She had known one of them, but it begged belief that Sergei knew this, not unless he'd ripped something out of my mind. I tried to twist away, but I might as well have fought the sky. Sergei smiled like Santa Claus as he shoved his fingers in my mouth and swiped his blood across my tongue. It was as sweet as opium, burning a hole into the nerves of my mouth. A rush flooded through my head and chest like ice water. The veil of glamour was pulled away from my eyes, and for the first time I saw. His face was the pallid cream of old parchment, and the violet color of Sergei's eyes was lurid, his pupils drawn to thin vertical slits under the light. Trembling with chills, I forced myself to look across at Vera. I saw her, really saw her, for the first time. She wasn't just thin and weathered. She was taxidermied, her tan skin pulled taut over her bones. She's dead. My voice cracked. Sergei's lip was still bleeding, and I was drawn back to it, iron to the magnet. The dark orange trickle ran down to mix with the ginger curls of his beard. The smell was chemical and toxic and sweet, like someone lighting a crack pipe with a burning crayon. And so are you. Sergei roared with sudden laughter. He had iron teeth set like bullets in his jaws, top and bottom. It only took you 30 years to work that out, boy. He slapped his thigh. Human after all, aren't you? Vera, show him your scars. She complied without question, hooking her thin hands under the edge of her tank top and lifting it up to her chin. Her torso was peppered with old scars and bullet holes, the latter stuffed with yellowing wool cork. She had a single enormous tear from sternum to flank on the heart side. It was dark and knotted, pulled together with rusted metal stitches, and sealed with a sigil burnt into her flesh. Her dusky skin was puckered like old leather, and no one had known, not even me. It's good work, isn't it? Sergei leered at me. My lovely Vera. You're looking at one of Mother Russia's unsung revolutionary heroes, Alexei. She was shooting Tsarists with a one-shot rifle when your grandfather was an infant. I recruited her just before the First World War. Recruited. In all my life, I'd known Sergei was a monster of a kind. I'd known that the Organizatia laid machination atop machination, a constantly scheming, writhing morass of men trying to one-up each other while they one-up the world. I knew that Brighton Beach was a tiny backwater, established in the USA like a military base or a sleeper cell. But this was not what I'd expected. How old are you? Wouldn't you like to know? He mimicked my voice. In shocked silence, Sergei returned to his chair. He shucked his jacket off before he sat and thumped his arm down on the armrest, staring at me haughtily as he turned it, palm up, to bare the inside of his elbow. Vera broke her place and went to him, mechanically rolling his sleeve up to expose the crook of his elbow. He was tattooed from fingertips to bicep, cats, daggers, skulls, crowns, spades, the marks of kingship in the gulag. What was in the warehouse, Alexei? Sergei sounded calm now, reasonable, save for the audible clack of his metal fangs. Vera was unwrapping a needle and syringe. My shoulders crawled with tension. I told you. Try again. Sergei looked up, fixing me with a shark's blank stare. As his eyes met mine, something clicked in my throat. My tongue twitched. I couldn't stop. The words came up like contractions, like waves of nausea. I fought it, but it was like struggling against the urge to vomit. Rind. A gift horse rind. Sergei made a sound low in his throat and did not flinch as Vera slid the needle into his flesh. Now that I could see him for what he really was, Sergei's skin was pallid, his muscles the texture of clay. There was no twitch of the skin as the needle slid in, only the tiny squeak of the syringe as Vera drew a full barrel of thick brown fluid. And finally, what was in this rind? I fought for my art, for a word or a gesture or something, anything to spit in Sergei's face. As his eyes blazed from across the room, the letters would not resolve in my mind's eye. There was no resisting him, not after he'd made me taste his blood. A woman, I said, not human. Vera stood by Sergei, stock still, as he leaned forwards in his too small chair. Dark skin, white hair, blue eyes. Pale skin, white hair, blue eyes. The description ground out of my throat like gravel. Tall, Yes. I was grateful that her face was a blur. I could remember Zarya, the things she'd said. I'd know her scent if it blew to my nose from a mile downwind, but there was nothing for me to describe. Yes. Sergei smiled, and a flicker of some half-hidden emotion flashed over his face, too elusive and too subtle for me to understand. And was she healthy, young, and innocent? His question stopped my tongue. Healthy, yes. He waited. I swallowed again, and the words came up without my being able to stop them. Not especially young. She was articulate, knew how to fight. She cursed a few times. What was her name? His pupils pinned. Zzz. Ticking, struggling, I couldn't look away from his eyes, and I couldn't stop my tongue from forming the word. Zarya. Oh, his eyes narrowed. Zarya. What a lovely name for a mare. So I'll leave it at that. Gift horses, if you follow the link to the Dermal Highway wiki, there is a page on gift horses, which may be somewhat enlightening, possibly more confusing. They're quite mysterious creatures, so that's sort of intentional. I will post a bit more art. So I don't have any art of Sergei, but I do have quite a bit of art of Alexei. And so here is the most recent painting I did. As you can see, smiles all the time. Yeah, the smiling thing is actually kind of a cultural thing in part. As you can see. All right. So in contrast to that scene that I just read, which is quite dark, I'm going to read something that's a bit lighter. This scene is the very first scene from this prequel novella that I'm writing, which is a bit lighter in tone. It's, I guess, it's sort of Alexei in happier days, so to speak. It's a little bit more action orientated, a bit more Mafia, a bit less sort of mysterious occult stuff. So I'm just going to note on the wall that I just finished. Staying glass reading. And now it's time for the funny stuff. First page or so. Now this is not going to be a very long reading, but it is considerably less kind of full on. However, you wouldn't know that from the first line. 2 nights before Vyacheslav Nazarenko burned to death, Vasily and I were at the movies. It was a week after the premiere of Aliens, and we were watching it for the 3rd time. Oh, here it comes. Vasily, mumbling around a mouthful of popcorn, pointed at the screen with the straw of his soda. The screaming cock of doom, Alexei, right out of her fucking chest. I didn't reply, eating kernels one at a time. I flicked one into my mouth and caught it with a crunch. This is why you never let anything over 5 inches near your mouth, man. Bananas, cuttlefish, nothing. Before you know it, bam! Something's rammed its dick right down your throat and is pumping you full of alien spooge. Shh! Someone behind us hissed. Vasily, I stared fixedly at the screen, keeping my voice down. They're eggs. Yeah, eggs, which is basically just spooge in a crunchy shell. He made a face. Worst M&M's flavor ever. Shh! The hissing behind us was louder this time. A man's voice. It was lost in the sudden shriek of the chestburster exploding, the cocoon woman screeching, the Marines on screen yelling, and the whoosh of a flamethrower. Yeah, bitch, toast that marshmallow. Vasily bounced in his seat. I saw the man behind us reach forward to shove at Vasily's head. He flinched on instinct as I dropped my popcorn and snatched my fingers around the stranger's wrist, cranking it back. Don't touch my friend, I rumbled. Hey, what the fuck? The stranger, a red-faced, stocky Brooklynite of indeterminate European ancestry, tried to pull his hand back. He had a can of beer in his other hand. Let go! You know, it's really rude to touch people's heads in some cultures, Vasily said. So how about you go and fuck yourself in the ass with that can and let me enjoy my goddamn movie? The guy turned purple. All at the same time, he threw his beer into my face. I lunged forward to punch him, and Vasily turned in his seat and dumped popcorn over the both of us. Suka chilo, I snarled. The screaming and screeching on the screen drowned out the sounds of our fistfight as I was pulled over the seat and into the next row. He'd made a mistake in dragging me across to him. I'm nearly always shorter than every other man in the room, but I'm also often the strongest, and I know how to brawl. It was 1986 in Brooklyn, and summoning an usher was the last thing on anyone's mind as I took the guy down to the floor. Confined between the rows of red padded seats, there wasn't much room to wrestle on the sticky carpet. I got onto his chest and beat him until he stopped trying to knock my teeth out and started fighting for escape instead. The people who had noticed the fiasco in the aisles around us cheered us on. The man crawled out from under me and under the legs of our fellow moviegoers. He stumbled up at the end of the row as I did my best to stalk towards him. Difficult to be menacing when you have to turn and sidle like a crab past the knees of laughing, bewildered, irritated people. Eyeing me like a wild deer, our assailant turned tail and ran. I rejoined Vasily, glaring at him in the gloom as I took my seat and used paper towel to wipe beer out of my hair. In the spirit of comradeship, he offered me his soda. I accepted a mouthful. We lasted another 15 minutes before the staff came in. It was Vasily who saw them. He nudged me and then motioned to the door at the corner of the theater. Hey, check it out. Time to make our daring escape. Ugly and a few of the cinema staff were congregating at one of the exit doors. They were waiting, which meant they were probably hanging on the police. I nodded, and together we picked our way in the opposite direction, headed up the back of the theater and out into the tacky Art Deco hallway of the cinema. Well, that was a fuck-up. Vasily rolled his eyes. You head outside. I'm going to the box office. What? I brushed down my wet button-down shirt, which smelled strongly of alcohol. Why? Because I'm getting our money back, is why. He slapped me on the shoulder and gently steered me towards the front door of the cinema. As we were going out, the police were coming in. Two pigs passed us in the foyer with a small glance at my disheveled hair. Hey, sir! Vasily called out to them, lifting his voice above the milling crowd. Excuse me, are you looking for the drunk guy? Yeah, what's it to you? The cop called back. Vasily pointed back down the hall. They're that away. Guy in the wife-beater and gold chain. The ushers already have him at the door downstairs. No worries. The other cop held up a hand to him and passed us on by. Are you fucking crazy? I hissed. Crazy as a snake on a hot road, Vasily replied cheerfully. We're Blatnoy. Go on, man. I'll meet you at the car. So Blatnoy, or Blatnoy is it's a Russian word indicating someone who is born with a kind of privilege, like a sort of privileged respect, I guess. And it's used in the Russian Mafia to refer to people who are basically they've been born into the life, I guess. So he's basically saying, effectively, we're royalty. That's what that kind of means. Criminal royalty. There was more than one reason Vasily insisted I leave, and more than one reason why I was happy to do so. I killed people and disposed of bodies for a living, and I wasn't great around cops. It was like they could smell the violence and magic on me, the lingering ghost of old blood, cold metal, and bleach. It was due to my profession that I had a towel and a spare shirt in the car, spare gloves, and a gun. There was also a bottle of Dramamine, which I was very happy to take after the sensory assault of the cinema on my synesthesia. Aliens was worth it, but it was still hard going when every high-pitched shriek burned like xenomorph acid on my tongue. After 15 minutes or so, Vasily strolled out of the building and popped the passenger side door, dropping into the seat. He had a shit-eating grin and a deep light in his dark blue eyes. VIP passes for a month. He winked and clicked his tongue. They had the guy in handcuffs. He keeps on ranting about some Russian dwarf that don't speak American trying to punch his lights out. My goodness, I said, tugging my gloves up along my wrists. I have no idea who that could be. Some people are just nuts, right? Vasily sat back in his seat, stretching out like a cat. Well, let's get back home. I want to jerk off to the image of Ripley with a flamethrower while it's still fresh in my mind. So that's the start of Lightbringer, which is this novella that I'm going to be giving away to people. It's essentially an extortion plot. So there's going to be extortion and counter-extortion in that particular story. And like I said, it's a sort of standalone thing from Alexi's youth, his wild youth, where he's punching up people in the backs of cinemas. So I'm going to start posting more art for this. So I think maybe at this point, I'll ask questions and I'll just kind of prattle on about the different characters. If people would like to hear about a particular topic, I'd be happy to speak about it. This would be something that would be good for people to indicate in the event post. So I'll open up a Q&A thread where people can leave comments. Otherwise, I'm just going to start talking about characters in the Russian Mafia. So express interest in particular topics. Highway. Yeah. Curse words. I mean, I can talk about Russian swearing. Like Eastern European swearing is great. It's really awesome. Okay, so there's that. I actually haven't caught up on the comments in this thread yet, so I'll just have a quick look back, just in case anyone's posted something. Okay, well, at least someone has gone and gotten their free copy of Blood Hound. Oh yeah, then that's right. If you're watching this and you're not actually watching the comments on the event, there is a free giveaway for the first book. You basically just sign up and you grab a copy of the book in your preferred format. It's totally free. It's a full length. Here we go. No, that's not what I want. It is a full length novel. So let's see if I can like post the link on the screen. I think I can just post it in the group chat here actually. So yeah, if you can see the group chat on on this broadcast, then you should be able to just get to it straight from there. All right. So yeah, I hope you enjoyed that. I guess that stained glass reading kind of went on for a little while. Basically, this book almost could stand alone. So even if you kind of are just getting into the series and you just want to pick it up, then you can do that. I will also post a series link towards the end of my hour. I've still got, looks like I've still got about 20 minutes. Let's see if anyone's, oh, okay. So people want to know what gift horses is. Okay, and Russian swearing. All right, so I'll start with gift horses. Okay, gift horses are a very important part of the Dermal Highway setting. They are, it kind of requires a bit of background on sort of, I guess, the paracosm itself. The essential concept of Dermal Highway, the thing that's at the heart of every story that's told in that setting, is that God is a physical organism, that it's this huge creature. It's a multiversal organism. So every like tiny galaxy in its body is like one cell in its body, and they're literally conceived to be cells. They exist in a kind of interstitial reality. So everything within God is connected. It's possible to travel between the cells of God, which is something that comes up later in the series. And effectively, this creature was violated by a big like viral entity, which is called the Nothing, or the No. And the No essentially, like, I guess you could say it fertilized it in a fucked up kind of way. The No pretty much like broke through the protective shell of this God organism and stuck a great big needle into it and started injecting it with like viral, you know, payloads. And so all of these monsters and all of these demons and things that turn up in the setting are basically derived from this initial viral penetration by the Nothing. Gift horses were the first humanoid creatures to exist within the God organism. So there's something like, for people that aren't sort of steeped in the mythos, they're kind of a cross between like unicorns and angels, I guess, in terms of their role. They're effectively servants of the organism, but it's not so much like a spiritual service thing. It's more like they're operative cells. They're like white blood cells that travel around this thing. They have a lot of unique properties which relate to the unicorn mythos. For one thing, they have silver blood, which is the reference to Zarya in the reading I did. Their blood kind of is pure magic, and when it's coagulated in a physical form, phytonic mass kind of looks like mercury. I don't know if any of you are into the occult, but if you are, there's a concept that is actually mentioned in Harry Potter as well. The Philosopher's Stone, or Mercurial, or Philosopher's Mercury, philosophical Mercury, is basically what this concept is based on. And essentially, gift horses carry inspiration. That's kind of their job. They carry inspiration. They're catalysts. They move around God. They trigger events to happen in defense of the organism. So they're trying to get rid of this viral entity, basically. And they have a lot of really kind of mysterious and unique qualities. They're not really anything that's appeared in fiction before. They're kind of their own thing. The Dermal Highway wiki, as I mentioned, has a page, which I will bring up and link. I think that is not the wiki search. The wiki pages. There we go, the gift horse. So the other thing about gift horse is that they're fruit. They are literally fruits. They are fruits that grow on trees that can be eaten. They are sentient, like people-shaped fruit. And that is something that Alexei has to kind of deal with. Not only are they fruit, they have to be eaten to stay alive. So essentially, because they're fruit, they leave their tree, which is like their mother. And as soon as they leave their tree, they begin to rot. They begin to decay because they're fruits. And essentially, every now and then, someone has to kill them and eat them. And when they're eaten, which is a process that's referred to as the pact, when they're pacted, they reincarnate. They come back to life like a phoenix. And so they kind of have to be killed and massively eaten. Specifically the heart. There's a lot of, I don't know if you know much about unicorns, but the alicorn is a concept with unicorns. In sort of like horse-shaped unicorns, it's the horn. The horn is the alicorn, and it's essentially the source of the unicorn's energy and power. In gift horses, the alicorn is in their heart. They have a two-layer heart that has like an external heart and the alicorn inside. And they have all of the properties of unicorns. Like they can, they dissolve poisons. They can't be, they can't be killed with poison. They respond to virgins. Alexei is a virgin, by the way, which is a fairly important part of the first book. And there's a point in the second book where someone learns this and they're like, wow, are you really a wise virgin? And he's like, oh, for fuck's sake, not you too. Oh my God, just leave it alone. But that is a fairly important part of the first book. And writing a story that focuses on a male virgin that doesn't denigrate the fact that he's a virgin, like it's not a bad thing that he's a virgin, was kind of a fairly unique experience with writing a character. So I don't know if that actually sheds any light on what gift horses are. They're quite hard to explain. They're much better to demonstrate through fiction. So they're much more fun to write than they are to try and kind of exposit, As for Russian swearing, Russian swearing comes in two varieties. So Russian, there's like kind of like your standard Russian that you talk, with on the street. And then there's two other kinds of like slang language that evolved in Russian, and that is partly a composite of Russian and other languages as well. So the first one of those is mat. And mat refers to a slang language which primarily revolves around the use of the word hui. And hui essentially means cock or penis. It can mean fuck. And it's used like an affix that is attached to like every possible word. So mat kind of makes liberal use of hui. And it also makes liberal use of, various other kinds of, nasty words and phrases. So in the example I just read, like the first chapter of Lightbringer that I just read out, there's a point where Alexei swears at the guy that he's beating up, where he says "suka khilo," and that literally means like it could be literally translated as bitch, fuck, kind of weirdly, but in Ukrainian it makes more sense, in that it's essentially like attaching a really rude suffix to a really rude word and just making it like 20 times as rude. So you're basically calling someone a fucking bitch, but it's even more serious than that. Like you've probably read about or heard about how Russia annexed Crimea from the Ukraine. Well, the Ukrainian nationalists who were defending Crimea, their motto, the thing that they were spray painting on all the walls and holding up signs during the protest was Putin Khilo. Basically, Putin is a dick, except, like I said, it's even more rude in the cultural context. So it's a really serious thing to kind of attach to things. People have been fired from government for using that affix in the Ukraine and Russia. It's considered to be kind of like you don't do it. So part of Russian swearing is attaching hui to everything. Another part of it is really creative, like curses and stuff. There's a really good kind of folk curse that Alexei uses now and then. He's kind of from a rural Ukrainian background. Like his father was a kind of rural Ukrainian man, and so he has some I guess folksy sayings that he has sort of as part of his upbringing. So I will just see if I can find it in the book, because it's where he finds Angwa. The scene with Angwa in this book is actually quite funny too, but I don't think I'll read it out. Oh, there it is. And I just lost it, of course. So there's Duke doing his thing. Here we are. I know this book pretty well because I edited it myself. Okay, well, I don't think I'm going to be able to find it. Oh no, here it is. Awesome, I just found it. So if any of you are actually from Eastern Europe, please forgive my awful pronunciation. I'm Australian. I have an Australian accent when I speak any language. So the saying pretty much is, it's meni si treba jak zubi v dupu. And it literally means I need this like I need teeth in my ass. And that is one of Lacey's favorite sayings. When he's pissed off, it's like, oh my God. You know, that's kind of what he does for that one. And those kinds of sayings are really common. For some reason, there is a lot of association between Russian swearing and pear trees, and I don't know. I think it's because pears kind of look like balls. So that's another thing. Like, if you find any Russian sayings that refer to a pear tree, they're actually talking about testicles. But yeah, that's pretty much all I can elaborate. Oh, the other thing, that's right. There was Mart and there's Fenya. Fenya is a totally different thing. Fenya is a slang language that is used by the criminal underworld in Russia. Or it was. It's a little old-fashioned these days. They don't tend to use it. Like, young guys will use Fenya to look cool. You know how, like, people try and copy, like, rap musicians to talk the way they talk. You know, like, white boy in South Carolina is trying to talk like, you know, Snoop Dogg. That's kind of what happens these days when young guys try to use Fenya in conversation. But back in the 60s and earlier, it was a language that evolved in the prison camps in the Soviet Union. So Fenya was kind of really important for the older organized criminals in the Soviet Union. And so Fenya is a kind of, it's a glot, it's like a kind of pidgin almost of Russian, Ukrainian, Polish, a bunch of other languages like Central Asian languages and things like that. Very similar to like one of those like secret languages that evolves in sort of outcast communities. Now, Fenya is very rough. It sounds very rough. It's not a particularly pleasant language to listen to, as you can imagine. And it uses a lot of like aphorisms and sort of like references to things. So it uses like, talking about guards as dogs. Alexei occasionally uses words from Fenya. One of them he uses pretty frequently is musor. Musor essentially means garbage, and it refers to the police. You can pretty much understand why he's gotten that language from a prison camp. So musor, there's another couple of words that they use pretty frequently. Burki, bull, torpedo. Burki literally means bull, and it basically refers to a guy who's willing to beat people up for money. The other one that I was talking about, torpedo. Torpedo literally means like it's a slang term for a hitman. So torpedoes are people that you point them at people and they kill stuff. It's pretty much the intention of that one. And yeah, that's pretty much all I've got. on the Russian swearing part. So other than that, really, for the last few minutes, I will plug where to get these books and where to learn more Starship Troopers style. So the wiki is a great resource. I'll just post the... Oh no, I already posted the Insta freebie and I need to do it again. So you've got the Insta freebie, you've got the wiki. And I will also post a link to the series because now that there's 2 books, there is like a dedicated series page for Blood Hound. Oh yeah, I guess there's one other thing I could talk about in the time I've got left. For anyone who's interested, the books feature a lot of LGBT characters. Alexei himself is gay. He doesn't know he's gay. He's very deeply closeted. In book 1, there's not so much emphasis on like the LGBT cast. They very much appear in later books, and that's because book 1 very heavily set in the actual underworld setting. So there's not really a whole lot of room in the Russian Mafia to be gay, let alone, you know, trans or anything. So the first book is very much Alexei like learning that he doesn't fit in with his people. The second book introduces a bunch of different characters, including a trans man, so a transgender man. There is a gay guy who is openly gay. There's another, you know, there's different characters from different sectors of the community. As time goes on, you know, there'll be characters who are bisexual, who may be intersex. I'm currently in the process of consulting the intersex community in a couple of different places to learn about, you know, some of their issues to do a kind of good representation of them. And that's a fairly important part of the series and my writing. I'm part of that community myself. And for me, like one of the things I set out to do with this series, I wanted to write an action-orientated series, kind of like the Dresden Files in terms of its speed and its kind of basic content, you know, wizards doing cool stuff. But I wanted there to be LGBT characters who weren't just bit players, who weren't just kind of like sitting on the sidelines or dying of AIDS and not doing anything for the plot. Like, there's no character in this book, except possibly Alexei himself, who has any kind of like coming out arc or anything like that. They're very active. They're very dynamic. One of the characters in book 2, Angua, is particularly like this. He is a very important character for the series, and also one of Alexei's potential love interests. I haven't actually decided who Alexei's love interest is. He had a bit of a thing for his old best friend, but his best friend was not into him, so he kind of kept that to himself. But now it's kind of open in the future where that's going to go, and I may respond to fan direction. There's going to be people who are like, "Oh my god, why is he doing this? Why isn't he loving this guy?" And you know, that may influence. It may also just end up like with people dying horribly. But you know, my existence is basically to torture you guys. That's what an author really does. Anyway, I will wrap up. My time's almost over, and the next person will be coming along soon. And that next person is... That next person is Liz Copen, who is a fantastic author. Her books are great. I'm about halfway through her first book. Right now, I have an enormous TBR, but I'm pretty much, I'd say about halfway through her book now. And yeah, she's a really good writer. She writes in a similar genre. She writes a kind of, I guess, Weird West almost stuff. I think she's actually working on like a legit Weird West now. In addition to her, pretty much every one of these authors that's lined up, Lisa Blackwood, Ben Reeder, Alex P. Berg is very well known, Jeffrey Cook, amazing writers. So please stick around and listen to them and listen to their books because they're really cool. And Ronnie, of course, who is the author of Grave Measures and Grave Beginnings, which I would describe his series as rollicking. That would be the word I would use. It's rollicking. It's kind of more like the Dresden Files. It's sort of fun and it's fast paced and the characters are complete smartass. So his books are really great. Go check him out. And I hope that was enjoyable enough to listen to, all 6 to 10 of you. how many people were listening to the feed. But I guess you know, this video will actually be on YouTube now, so it will be saved and you can watch it whenever you want if you want to hear the dulcet sounds of my extremely monotone voice. Other than that, I'm pretty much done. So I'll hand over to Ronnie and Liz, and thank you for coming, and I hope you enjoy the reading. Cheers.